Our topic tonight is simplicity. And some might wonder, why simplicity? Why is simplicity a discipline? Well, you need do nothing more than look at the life around you that you live to know why simplicity is a needed discipline. Jesus had so much to say about living a simple life. The early saints understood what it was like and how important it was to simplify. And yet we live in an age which is far from simple. We live in an age where we have everything at our fingertips, but we have more electronic gadgets than we can keep up with or know how to use. The average household has 3 television sets, 4 telephones, and the Lord knows how many other electronic gadgets. We live in a life that is jam-packed with things to do. We have to choose between driving the kids to soccer, going to choir practice, being at Bible study, going to a movie, being over here at somebody's marriage, whatever it is. Our life is just so complicated today. We spend so much of our time and energy on the complications of our life. We spend so much time seeing that things that we have accumulated get found, repaired, stored, whatever. I have some statistics that are very interesting that I want to share with you that may help set the stage for why it is so important for us to simplify our lives. On average, today's American consumer has a total of 13 credit obligations. They include credit cards, gas cards or bank cards or department store charge cards, installment loans, auto loans, mortgage loans, student loans. Of these 13 credit obligations, on average 9 are likely to be credit cards. Credit card debt carried by the average American today is over $8,000. Total finance charges paid by Americans in 2005, $50 billion in finance charges. The average college student today carries 4 credit cards with unpaid balances of $2,300. Americans spend more on legalized gambling than on groceries. 20% of Americans have items stored in the nation's 40,000 storage facilities because they don't have enough room for all their stuff in their house. And they have to store it so they have room to buy more stuff so that they can go out and buy another storage unit. Financial problems today are the largest contributing cause of marital stress and divorce. And then when you get married, the biggest argument is over who gets what stuff. In 1999, $3 billion was given to 600 Christian mission agencies. Compare this $3 billion given to 600 Christian mission agencies with $58 billion spent on soda products, $24 billion in jewelry store sales, $8 billion for movie theaters, $13 billion for chocolate products, $38 billion in vending machine sales, $11 billion for video games, $7 billion spent on greeting cards, $23 billion for toys, $91 billion for lawn and garden products, and $23 billion for pets, and $3 billion spent on God. Let's look at some statistics on the common everyday item of the television. Percentage of households that possess at least one television set, 99.98. Number of TV sets in the average household, average, want to guess? 3. Just checking if you were listening. Do you know the percentage of U.S. homes with 3 or more TV sets? More than 3 TV sets. 70% of U.S. homes have more than 3 television sets. And the number of hours per day that people spend on watching those 3 television sets is an average in each household of 6 hours and 47 minutes. Compare that to how much time is spent on reading the Bible in households every day. Anybody want to guess?
30 minutes.
11 and a half minutes. The number of hours TV is watched annually by Americans, 250 billion. The percentage of Americans who pay for cable TV, 76%. The number of videos rented daily in the U.S., 6 million, and the number of public library books checked out, 3 million. And the percentage of Americans who say they waste too much time watching TV, 50%. But probably they're not doing anything about it. And let's look at some of the figures about scriptures. Well, let's look at one other thing first of all. Any of you know what the average U.S. household income was in 2005? Average household income. Higher? 53,265 is the average household income. Household, not individual income. Anybody want to guess what it is in Mexico? Our neighboring country. 3,700. Anybody want to guess what it is in Uganda, a country that we've had some association with? $330. In Haiti, one of our neighboring countries, only some miles off the coast of Florida, $310 average household income. And at the bottom of the list, a country that I have visited several times, Malawi in Central Africa, $210, where 38% of the people are starving every day. In the Bible, there are 40 verses on baptism. There are 275 verses on prayer. There are 350 verses on faith. There are 650 verses on love. And there are 2,350 verses that relate to finances and material possessions. And why do you think that would be? Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And how many of us too often fight with material things and the draw they have on us, the drain they put on us, and the arguments they cause in our families? Today, life is very complicated in many ways. And one of the things that Jesus understood is that many of the reasons our life is so complicated is because of us feeling like we need to have things. It's the American dream, right? Own a home, own 2 cars, maybe a vacation place, maybe put this nest egg into the bank, which is the gap between the poor in this country and the rich in this country increases at a rate of 3% every year in terms of the wealthiest and the poorest. You know, most Christians don't even pretend to follow God's teachings in the area of simplicity, not even at church. Most of us arrive in cars that are much more than are needed for transportation. Often they're expensive enough for many, many, many others to have transportation. We dress in clothes that are more than adequate to cover our bodies. Our credit card debt is in the thousands, and yet we say we cannot afford to give God His tithe. So we really just give Him a few dollars as a mere tip in comparison to what we really owe Him and in comparison to what we could be giving to help those who are starving and sick and dying around the world. God has given us a formula for economic equality and provision for all. But in our materialistic and socially hierarchical society, the Word of God falls on deaf ears in this area. We say to ourselves, well, I'll be the only one living what God says about material things, so why bother? Consider 2 Corinthians 8, verses 8 to 15. Give out of your abundance to help those who are lacking because of their poverty. Or Acts 2, 44 to 47. The disciples shared all things in common and gave to any who were in need. Or the treasure principle, as I call it, Matthew 6, 19 to 21. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. And finally, 1 John 3:17. If anyone has the world's goods and does not share them with a person in need, there is no love in him. I think today more than at any other time in the history of the world, we need to practice the discipline of simplicity. The early saints knew how important it was. It was always an essential in almost every monastic rule of life that one of the elements of it would be to live a life of simplicity. That was lived out in different ways. If you were a Franciscan, you took a vow of poverty, which means you were not able to own anything of your own. It all belonged to God, and it was all shared in common. And of course, this came from St. Francis, who, though he was very wealthy, would have a great inheritance from his father's estate, gave up everything, even to the point of stripping off his clothes and leaving them there and running out the door naked, because he wanted nothing to do with storing up for himself treasures on earth. His treasures were all the people that God had given him to care for. I think Foster's book is very good in the area of teaching us about simplicity. He gives some very practical suggestions, a few of which I want to reiterate because I think it's really important for us to take a hard look at what we buy and why, and the way we use our time and why. First of all, one of the things he suggests is that we buy things for their usefulness rather than for their status. In other words, you buy something because it has a function. You buy it for function rather than form. What sort of a function does the diamond ring on your finger or the whatever it is, you can fill in the blank, actually fill in terms of function? Well, we can always say it represents the value of our marriage, and that's true, but so would a simple gold band. He says that we should reject anything that produces an addiction in us, especially helpful when we're talking about recovery today in our services. I'm reminded of the story that Foster tells about, and I haven't read this in a while, so I don't remember the details specifically, but I remember him talking about, it was either himself or someone else, and you all can probably correct me, who was so addicted to reading the newspaper that when his didn't arrive, he was tempted to steal the neighbor's, and then he knew there was a real problem. And so he gave up reading the newspaper. One of the things he also suggests is that we develop a habit of giving things away. I know someone recently who cleaned out his closet to give away clothes to those who were in need. How many of us would benefit by doing something similar? Not just because we're tired of them, but because they are good clothes who someone else could use. How many pairs of shoes do we really need to keep our feet covered?
Man or woman?
How many men in here own more than 4 or 5 pairs of shoes? How many women in here own more than 4 or 5 pairs of shoes? Do we need them? How much money do you think we spend on those in a lifetime? I'd really like to do a study on that sometime and find out how much money the average woman spends on shoes in her lifetime. My wife would not want me to take that survey. What's that?
I said Brenda Beggs would make us have a really high percentage.
So would my wife. But she has been very good. She brought into our marriage many pairs of shoes. But she's been very good about not buying any new ones. Many new ones since we've been married. Many. I would say also something that Claire and I agreed on when we first got married, and we have to this day held true on. And that is, we won't buy anything we can't afford to pay for. Nothing. Not a car, no gifts, nothing. If we can't afford it and we can't pay for it, then we don't buy it. That means we have an intentional plan of saving for a car, and we make sure that when we go to buy a car, we pay for it with cash so that we don't have to pay debt. We made a decision we would always pay off our credit cards. We would never finance anything. And we've held to that so far. Now, that's not to boast, but it's to say it's kept us out of a lot of trouble. The biggest financial problem people have today is debt, and it is high. And it is because we buy things that we can't afford to pay for. I wish credit cards had never been invented. They would save so many heartaches of the people that I find in my office who really are totally out of control, and so many bankruptcies that result from that. But I would encourage you, even this Christmas, to buy nothing that you cannot pay for yourself. Nothing on credit. That's not to say you can't use a credit card for its convenience, as long as you can use it to pay off that bill at the end of every month. I think there's a mentality here that we have to buy, X number of presents for everybody in our family, or one for everyone. And yet, when you think about it, think about all the tie holders and knickknacks and kitchen gadgets and things that people have given to you for Christmas, or you've given that really haven't been used or aren't needed. What about instead thinking of something that's really a treasure to you, that you've had, that means something to you, and give it to those you love? Or to make a song up, or to write a poem, or to draw a picture, or to just sit down and write a letter of your heartfelt feelings and what a gift that person has been in your life. Wouldn't that be an unusual gift, and probably something that for so many would be more meaningful? Probably not for my Emma or Julia. Sometimes our kids don't understand the value, but certainly adults do, or they should. It's a good thing to do.
Christmas, that's all I gave was
And-
letters to people.
And I'll bet you that was a very important thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I bet it was treasured.
She still loves hers to this day.
Uh-huh.
She
One-
can't read it without crying.
One of the things I might suggest to you to do is to, and this is really a treasure. I have something that Claire gave to me as a Valentine's Day present 6 years ago. It was called the Song of Lawrence. And she based it off the Song of Solomon, the Song of Songs. And it basically was her, and she followed the format. She'll admit she's not a poet, but she can at least follow the form and insert words that are appropriate. And she wrote little neat comments and put in things there about me that meant so much to her, and put it in a nice booklet with ribbon on it and presented it to me. And that is the most treasured thing I have for my wife, more than anything else she's given me that's material, because it's the heart. How easy it is to go out and buy a gift. And in many cases, we fret, oh, what am I going to buy so-and-so? And we're scurrying around during a season that should be an entirely different focus for us as Christians. And we get so lost in the meaning of Christmas. And then, the day after Christmas, it's not Christmas anymore. As Christians, that's the day it begins. It used to be that people didn't even put up their tree or decorate until Christmas Eve. Well, now it's the day after Christmas. They all go out in the garbage and everything comes down. So why don't we celebrate the 12 days of Christmas the way it was intended, for us to understand what a wonderful gift Jesus Christ was to us? We've tried to do that in our own family by finding just small little tokens of love for one another, or expressions or things that we can say to each other every day of the 12 days of Christmas. Another thing that you might try to do is start obeying the Scriptures and what they have to say. What a novel idea, huh? First of all, although it's been argued in many ways and by different people that it is not true, you would be hard-pressed to convince me or any biblical scholar that tithing is not biblical. It has been always the standard of giving. It has always been what God has asked for us. In one way, it is a test of God to see whether we truly want to obey Him, and it's the best promise ever. It's associated, tithing, with one of the best promises God has ever given to us, right out of Malachi. That if you will tithe, put me to the test and see if I will not pour out upon you more blessing than you can handle. Well, I don't know how many of you in here want more blessing than you can handle. Raise your hand. But God says, test me, see if it won't be true. You go ahead and tithe. And in my letter that you're going to receive this week probably, or shortly after Thanksgiving, I challenge each person in this church to do what I challenge them to take what I call the tithe challenge. And that is for 1 year. Make it your goal to tithe, to give 10% of everything God puts in your hand back to Him through the local church. And then say, looking back upon it, if you can honestly say, no, God didn't bless me, there was no blessing and fruit in my life from doing that, I think you will find, as people usually have, and testimonies abound about it, that God makes true on His word. I think there are so many ways that we can live a simpler life. Some of it is to sit down and look at our crazy schedules and say, why are we driving ourselves crazy by having so many things that we do? Claire and I have already made a decision with our children. Every year they will be able to choose one activity, one regular activity that they can do. And that's it. If they want to take guitar lessons, that's it. That's all they're going to do is a regular activity. They want to play soccer, if they want to go to take dance or whatever, one. Because we don't want to spend all of our time driving from one place to the next and losing sight of the family time that is so important for us. And I have something that has amazed a lot of people, I think a lot of you understand, but over the years has amazed me that what I want to do more than anything else is to spend time at home with my wife and kids. And that's what I want to do. Not only is that what God has called me to do, to invest my life in my family, as a father, not just as a priest, as a minister of the gospel, as a father, my primary responsibility is to disciple my children and to love my wife. And the greatest gift that a father can give to his children is to love their mother and spend time with her. And how many husbands or fathers don't do that because they're too busy out there trying to make more money so they can give them more things, which when it comes down to it is not what children either want or truly need. They need just time spent with those who have been called to watch over them and to love them. So we need to sit down and take a good hard look at where we spend our time. And is it all a chasing after wind, as it says in Ecclesiastes? So much of what we do is a chasing after wind. It doesn't yield anything. What is it going to produce eternally for us? This is a rehearsal, sort of a dress rehearsal for the real thing. God is preparing us in this life, on this earth, for spending an eternity with Him. Are our pursuits, are our purchases, are our activities truly preparing us for a life spent in eternity with Him? So much of the time, not. It's not to say that we can't have fun, that we can't rejoice and engage in recreational activities and enjoy all of God's creation. But our lives are so complicated today, we often lose sight of what we're here for. Another thing that I often challenge people to do is to sit down and do an inventory of their checkbook and see what they're spending their money on. Is it primarily being spent on self? And I'm talking primarily about discretionary income. Obviously, we all need a place to live, we need to eat, we need the basic things. But over that, what is all of that being spent on primarily? Because that will show you where your heart is. Where you spend that money is truly where your heart is. Jesus said it very clearly. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. There are so many other ways to simplify our lives. I can't tell you, but I think starting to learn how to give away rather than collect. Claire and I recently made a decision. We were not going to buy anything other than the necessities of life for 1 month and see what happened. Turns out we had a rather large surplus in our budget that month. And she had made sure to stock up on makeup before we had actually gone into that month. But
Recorded,
it's just true. You can ask her. But I think we just need to take it seriously. How can we simplify our lives in our time, in our finances, in the things we purchase, just to simplify what we do? I have found such pleasure in just spending time with my family and just being with them rather than always having to be out and about and doing things and being places. And obviously, that's one of the reasons that I instituted several years ago a policy of only church activities on Sunday and Wednesday. And we were doing things all kinds of nights. A vestry was meeting on Tuesday, and a prayer group was meeting here, and the choir was meeting on Thursday, and there was something here literally every day of the week. But now, aside from the occasional meetings of the men and women on Saturdays, our ministries, our activities at the church take place on Sunday and Wednesday. The idea behind that, somewhat selfishly motivated, was for us to be able to spend time with our families. And I didn't want anybody to accuse them of not being able to spend time with their family because of church activities. And so that was one way to simplify. But look at your own lives. What are other ways that you personally can simplify? And what I'd like to do now is ask, what ideas any of you have? What revelations have come to you? What has God been speaking to you? Whether when you've been reading or praying or as we've been talking tonight. Is God doing anything? Is He challenging you in any way? Is He speaking to you that perhaps your life needs to be simplified? Because if He's speaking to you, He may be speaking to someone else, and your idea about that may help someone else. Okay, Denise? TV?
In our family, yeah. Between Chris and I, getting home from work, both of us eating, and just want to sit down on the TV. And then my kids find their way upstairs. And that's my challenge, because every once in a while I just turn the TV off, but he's not here, so I shouldn't. Oh, he likes TV a lot, more than I do, but I like to be with him while he does it, but, that's a challenge.
How difficult would it be if the TVs in your house disappeared?
I would like it. I do want to take that challenge on. There's got to be a better way to spend more family time and not my kids going up and, doing their homework. Even if it's just doing homework, which we have a lot of that, but doing it together downstairs. And so I feel that on my heart.
We have a family game night where we just get together, and even at their ages they are now, I've learned how to play Candyland and, flip the pig in the bucket and, all of these different things that, to be honest, are not my favorite games to play, but it's family time and it's important time. So what else? What other things? Anything else?
I started when I get catalogs in the mail, rather than looking at them, I just throw them away. Because I find myself thinking, oh, that would be nice to have. Oh, that would be nice to have. But if I throw them away, I don't have to deal with that.
I do that too.
Sometimes it's helpful. I was going to say, sometimes we need someone to do that for us. I have to admit, when I go to the mailbox, I automatically throw the catalogs away, but that's not because I would be looking at them.